I begin with a vow. I cannot, I will not, I must not permit this body to set itself up as a dictator over my thought, my peace, my life. I recognize the modern surge of health anxiety, the barrage of headlines, the clamor of statistics, the incessant whisper of worst-case imagination, and I say to it, no, this body is not a dictator. I assume conscious dominion over mind and body now. And God said, let us make man in our image, and let them have dominion. I take that not as future promise, but present assignment. Therefore, I assume dominion. I do not take orders from sensation. I refuse symptom rule. Why this urgency? Because if I relax into unguardedness even for a moment, world thought is at the door, pressing, probing, seeking entry through the crack of concern into a chamber called panic. If I do not stand, suggestion will enter as fear masquerading as prudence, as diagnosis obsession masquerading as responsibility, as constant self-scan masquerading as wisdom. In an instant, breath tightens, sleep frays. The appetite of spirit is replaced by an appetite for reassurance, and the eyes see not what is, but what could go wrong. I know this spiral. I have watched it. Sometimes it still tries to take me unawares. Sometimes for a breath or two, it may get the best of me, but not for long. I snap out of it, and I stand. Let not your heart be troubled, the Master says. And that is not a plea, but a command. Let not, I must not permit it. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Then I, in this instant, assume the sound mind, the loving governance, the quiet power. Now, let me make plain the government here. The body reports it does not rule. Sensation is information. It is not commandment. A doorbell may ring. I decide whether to open. A thermometer may read. I determine the meaning it shall be given. A pulse may throb. I choose the court in which that report will be heard. If I surrender the bench to fear, then fear drafts the verdict and stamps it my fate. If I remain on the bench as the steward of this temple, know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost? Then every report is received with calm, weighed with wisdom, filed without hysteria. I am not denying the report. I am denying its claim to sovereignty. I am not pretending I do not feel. I am declining to be driven. I am not revving up a swashbuckling ego to fight a body. I am enthroning a gentle I to govern a temple. This is the aim. Spiritual government, not bravado. Reality, not repression. I speak to the sea of sensation as the Christ spoke to wind and wave. Peace, be still. And I do it without drama. It has to be a gentle I, not an egotistical I, not as a swashbuckler, not the little self puffing itself to shout down the body, but the unassuming I that is closer than breathing, the I that says with Scripture, I am that I am, and with that presence comes order. I am not struggling to create peace. I am permitting the government that is already present to be felt. Be still and know that I am God. Be still. That is the first act of dominion. Know that is the second. I then live under that knowing. So the vow is clear and it is current. I refuse symptom rule now. I do not take orders from sensation now. I assume conscious dominion now. I establish the bench now. Reports will come as they come, and I shall receive them, but I will not let fear write the verdict. I will not abdicate my God-given office for a rumor. I stand, and standing I discover that breath loosens of itself, that sleep visits as a friend, that perception widens beyond the pinhole of dread. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I then shall know, and I then am made free in this very instant from the tyranny of bodily suggestion. And from this foundation we proceed. Now I take my post. I stand here the porter at the door of thought. Nothing enters that defileth or maketh a lie. I cannot permit my mind to be an open antenna, drawing in every world fear, every rumor of calamity, every advertisement of frailty. My mind is not public property. I govern what enters, what stays, and what leaves. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Therefore I keep it. Therefore I watch. Who seeks entrance? Let me name them plainly, for they love to move in anonymity. There is the compulsive checker that whispers, check again, check now, check once more before you sit down. There is the catastrophe scribe that drafts scripts of tomorrow's collapse and calls it preparation. There are borrowed medical stories, Aunt So-and-so's saga, the neighbor's misfortune, the headline that knows my age and number and pretends to be my prophecy. There are doomed statistics dressed in lab coats as if numbers were destiny. There is the memory of past scares that replays itself like a solemn priest repeating a curse. And there is the nervous system's false alarm. That little startle, that flutter, that phantom ache, which sends an urgent telegram and expects me to mobilize the battalions. Now I must speak with necessity and not with suggestion. If I open to them as to honored guests, fear becomes bodily. Breath tightens. Shoulders lift toward the ears. The heart thumps its drum, and then, behold, the body seems to prove the fear that invited it. The thought writes the sentence, and the flesh performs the drama. But I am not a theater for world thought. I am the temple of the Holy Ghost. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Then I let peace rule by refusing a thought that displaces peace to enthrone panic. So I adopt a simple question, and I keep it at the door like a lantern. Does this thought come as peace, clarity, and dominion, or as compulsion and dread? If it comes as peace, it bears my credential, for the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, sound mind. If it comes as compulsion must, hurry, or else if it comes as dread, this is it. This is the one. Then I know it is but suggestion. I say to it, not permitted. Get thee behind me, Satan. I do not wrestle it. I do not invite it in for debate. I do not offer it tea and sympathy. I quietly, firmly, impersonally close the door, and it fades because it never had substance. It was a knock and nothing more. I will not pretend this is easy in the beginning. I had my long periods of practice, sometimes at 2 a.m, while the body is tired and the world is quiet. A thought in a paramedic's uniform bangs on the door and shouts, "Now! Emergency!" And for a moment the hand reaches for the pulse. The mind starts composing last wills and final words. But not for long. I remember my office. I resume my post. I stand here the tiler over my mind and my body, sword sheathed. For it has to be a gentle eye. Put up thy sword. Not an egotistical eye, not as a swashbuckler, but as a governor who needs only presence to maintain order. I breathe the name that is no name but I, and the alarm, having no audience, drifts back into the impersonal mist from which it came. This is the discipline. I do not admit thoughts merely because they are loud, familiar, or widely published. I do not take in tenants who do not pay rent in peace. I ask of every knock, who sent you? Where are your papers? Do you bear witness to God's government or to the tyranny of chance? If you come with calm instruction, rest now, walk a little, drink water, call the physician in wisdom, and then be still. Enter and take a seat, for wisdom is gentle and never in a hurry. If you come with compulsion, check, hurry, panic, doom, then return to your nothingness. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. I resist not with fight, but with refusal. I do not argue suggestion into truth. I starve it of attention, and it goes. And hear me. When I hold this door, I save not only my mind, I save my body from being bullied by imagination. I cut the loop that makes fear bodily and the body fearful. I keep my thought as a sanctuary so that breath may remember its slow psalm, so that the heart may remember its ordained rhythm, so that sleep may find the bed prepared. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I then dwell by guarding the threshold of dwelling. My mind is not an inn for every traveler. It is the house of I, and I, by grace, am the porter. Now I must correct a danger that creeps in the very moment we speak of dominion. If I imagine that dominion is a little Joel tightening his jaw, squaring his shoulders, and wrestling a body into obedience, I have already left the kingdom and entered the boxing ring. That kind of dominion is only fear in armor. It inflates a me and sets it to fight a my body, and that fight ensures backlash, reaction, and fatigue. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Therefore, I cannot use might, I cannot use strain, and call it spiritual government. I must put up my sword. I must let the gentle eye appear. What is this gentle eye? It is not a shout. It is not a clenched fist. It is not a swashbuckler marching through the mind, screaming orders at organs. It is a presence, a hush, an inner assent to the fact that I and my Father are one, and therefore government already is. I do not manufacture dominion. I acknowledge it. I do not whip the sea. I whisper, peace, be still. And I myself become the stillness through which peace is felt. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Not in tension, not in effort, not in argument. Quietness, confidence, strength rising as gentleness. Now, yes, I know the temptation to perform. A symptom stirs, a thought shouts, and immediately the ego drafts a speech. I will show you. I will conquer this. And in 5 minutes we are panting, scanning, proving our own power to ourselves, and feeling worse for the proving. I will not pretend that I have never gone down that road. I had my long periods of practice in which the old swashbuckling techniques jumped up to volunteer. Flex willpower, repeat louder, do something. And sometimes they even got the best of me for a breath or two. But not for long. I snap out of it. I remember the injunction, put up thy sword. I withdraw from combat, not in defeat, but in recognition that combat was never government. I return to the seat. What is success then? Not that I forced the sensation out of existence, not that I bullied a heart to beat on my schedule, not that I argued adrenaline into peace. Success is that I refused fear's jurisdiction. I declined its court. I returned to the bench of consciousness and let the case be heard in the light. I did not condemn myself for being startled. I did not write a failure report. I simply resumed my office and let the government of I be felt. Be still and know that I am God. Be still first, no second. The body takes its cue from that order. Let me repeat. The gentle I is not the personal I. Do not get I and Joel mixed up. The personal Joel is a useful costume, a name, a role in time. The I is the living presence that says, before Abraham was, I am. The personal may try to seize this teaching and boast, I can do it, watch me. That is the danger. It feeds the ego and sets up the inevitable collapse, because the little self cannot bear the weight of God's office. Not I, but Christ liveth in me. Hear that rightly. Not the ego controlling the body, but the I, the Christ, the inner governor living as calm dominion through this temple. Then the yoke is easy and the burden is light, because it is not carried by a self apart from God. How do I know that I am in the gentle I and not the egotistical I? My breath will tell me. My tone will tell me. My words will soften. My inner posture will be that of a governor whose presence is enough. No shouting, no bayonets, just law recognized. When I am there, I do not force, I allow. I do not threaten, I affirm. I do not demand, I consent to what is already spiritually so. And if fear surges again, as it sometimes still does, I will not slap my own wrist and start the brawl anew. I quietly say, thank you, that will be all. Return to your nothingness. And I sit again in the seat, the porter becoming the prince, the mind becoming the sanctuary, the body becoming peaceful, because the government is felt. This is dominion without swashbuckling, a yielded authority, a gentle eye, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing, that governs not by force but by being. And in that being, health anxiety finds no throne to occupy, no drama to perform, no courtroom to try its cases, for the jurisdiction has been transferred to the I that is one. Now I go a step further, because until this is clear, we will keep fighting shadows. Let me repeat that error is impersonal. Fear is not me. Fear is not mine. Fear is suggestion seeking acceptance. It knocks like a courier with an urgent seal and hopes I won't look too closely at the sender's name. If I accept the envelope and sign my name to it, I make it my mail, my message, my destiny. But if I recognize it as impersonal suggestion, hypnotism, mesmerism, world belief whispering through the collective thought at large, then I can let it pass like a weather pattern that never owned the sky. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke. Liberty begins when I stop calling it mine. Now, yes, the body may send a report, a flutter, a twinge, a heat, a coldness. That is a report. The story that leaps upon it, that is the suggestion. The sensation is one thing, the script is another. The script often wears a white coat of borrowed statistics, headlines, Aunt Martha's fable, last year's scare, and it speaks with a priestly tone. This is your fate. I cannot permit that. I separate the two right at the door. I say, sensation, you are a neutral telegram. Story, you are a suggestion. Then, softly, with authority, I declare, this is a suggestion. It is not a law. Why? Because the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. If there is a law present, it is life's law. It is harmony's law. It is the gentle government of I. Do not blame yourself for having been startled. Do not blame your neighbor who repeats the latest doom. Do not blame the physician who, in sincerity, offers his best human wisdom. I am not interested in blame. Blame is still personal. I want freedom. They were but instruments by which impersonal suggestion sought audience. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgive the messenger, correct the message. Withdraw from the court that tries persons and step into the light that reveals suggestion as suggestion and lets it drop. Neither give place to the devil. Give it no place in identity. Give it no pronoun of possession. Give it no throne. How do I do this in the instant? I do not argue with the wind. I take my post. I feel the rise of the gentle eye in the chest. I exhale the word, I just the one word, and I say, within, this is a suggestion. It is not a law. I do not repeat it with clenched teeth. I repeat it as a judge stamps a document paid in full. I may add, I rest in the law of the spirit of life. I may add, perfect love casteth out fear. And then I watch the one sign that tells me truth is being obeyed. The breath begins to obey the government. It slows, it softens, it equalizes. The body takes its cue. The story loses its pacemaker. The mesmerism, starved of my belief, dissolves back into its native nothingness. Sometimes, yes, the old habit will flash. This is it. This is the one. And for a breath or two, the pulse may seem louder, the mind brighter with alarm. I will not condemn myself. I will not write a failure report. I resume my office. I declare again, this is a suggestion. It is not a law. I stand fast. And because I do not grant it personhood, because I do not grant it my pronoun, it cannot stitch itself to my destiny. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Why? Because it cannot find a self to pierce. It finds only I, without fear, without opponent, without a second. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. I then rest in that love. I then let suggestion be suggestion and pass. This is liberation. Not a fight won, but a claim refused. Not a drama performed, but a jurisdiction withdrawn. I stop saying my fear, my condition, my doom. I say, a suggestion knocked, and I did not sign. I remain the porter. I remain the tiler. I remain the I. And in that remaining, destiny is no longer a rumor of decline, but the quiet present tense of life governing itself as harmony. Now the next step, and it must be exact. I cannot maintain liberty if the ranks are confused. First, the body. Let me say it plainly. The body is an instrument. It reports. It does not legislate. This hand cannot lift itself. Something must bid it rise. This mouth does not speak itself. Something must shape the words. Under anesthesia, the arm lies like a tool on the table, and when the anesthetic lifts, the instrument resumes, because a governor has reappeared to direct it. It is the spirit that quickeneth. The flesh profiteth nothing. The body is beautiful in function, holy in purpose. Your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. But temple walls do not conduct the service. Presence does. Second, the mind. The mind is the interpretive layer. It is not the king. It is a gate, a porter, a tiler at the door of thought. It receives reports, assigns meanings, opens or closes to suggestions. If untrained, it is a gossiping usher seating every rumor in the front row. If trained, it is a faithful sentinel asking, who sent you? And do you bear the seal of peace? Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Not a racing, fearing, cataloging mind, but a yielded, obedient gate through which only that which serves harmony may enter and remain. Third, and here this is the heart of the matter, the true governor is the higher I, not the personal Joe, not the swashbuckling ego-performing courage. I mean the living I that says, before Abraham was, I am. I mean the inner Christ, the presence of God as identity, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. That I is the source of government, the law, the wisdom that directs both mind and body. In him, we live and move and have our being. We do not generate breath from a private battery. We live, move, and have being in I. Now, what produces health anxiety, confusion, panic? We enthrone the instrument and demote the governor. We set the thermometer on the throne and ask it for policy. We consult the pulse as an oracle, the mirror as prophet, the scale as judge, and we let the untrained mind act as town crier, shouting every rumor to the square. Then we wonder why the kingdom trembles. The instrument, asked to rule, can only report. The gate, left without assignment, can only react. The throne, left vacant of conscious recognition, leaves the house to the loudest voice. All we like sheep have gone astray from order, astray from government. What, then, is the correction? Restore rank, seat the governor, assign the gate, rejoice in the instrument. I turn within, not up into the head of concepts, but down into the chest where I rises without words and I consent, I and the Father are one. The government shall be upon his shoulder. I, the living I, am present. Then I instruct the mind gently. You are porter, not prince. Admit only peace, wisdom, and calm directive. And I bless the body, beloved instrument. You are holy. You are reported to, not reporting for. You function under law, not under rumor. Instantly the noise begins to fade because the kingdom is no longer leaderless. I will not pretend I never forget and slip back. Sometimes an instrument rattles and the gate starts shouting, but not for long. I resume my office. I remember the order. I declare with necessity and without drama. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion over mind and body now. I do not seize. I consent. I do not fight. I govern. I stand as the I that is one, and I let the mind keep the door, and the body serve as temple. Be still, and know that I am God. Be still, instrument. Keep watch. Gate. Know I. And in that knowing, the anxious kingdom rests, because the king is present, and order is peace. Now I must do a thing which sounds strange to religious ears and yet is the straight road to peace. I must strip the words, even the holy words, even the reverent words. As long as I keep tossing the same phrases back and forth in the head, God, spirit, presence, wholeness, diagnosis, syndrome, risk, my mind stays a shop of labels, and health anxiety lives on labels. Names breed narratives. Narratives breed pictures. Pictures stir chemistry. And before I have risen from the chair, the body has received its orders from a dictionary. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing is not adding more words. Renewing is emptying the shelf until only the living remains. Now let me repeat it as I have learned it painfully and joyfully. These words, God, Spirit, life, are good servants and poor masters. God, 3 letters, Spirit, 5 letters. Presence, 8. They are signposts, not the country. They are maps, not the mountaineer. If I cling to the sign and never walk the path, the sign becomes an idol, and the head becomes loud with piety while the chest still trembles. So I say to the mind, thank you for your verses and vocabularies. Lay them down for a moment. Lay down the symptom names, the diagnosis categories, the prognosis stories dressed up as fate. Lay down even the sweet religious phrases that once helped you climb. When I was a child, I spake as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. This putting away is not irreverence. It is reverence for reality beyond the word lengths. What then remains? There is one word I cannot and must not banish. I, not Joel, not the biography, not the curriculum vitae of virtues and fears. I, the bare living sense that rises not from the head where concepts stack, but from the chest where breath moves, where being announces itself without adjective. I am that I am. Hear it without costume. Feel it without echo. All the other words come up out of the head. I comes right up out of the chest, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. That I is not a slogan. It is the presence, which is in whom we live and move and have our being. Now, why is this necessary? Because when words command, the nervous system obeys their pictures. Say danger, and the pulse quickens. Say failure, and the shoulder knots. Say prognosis, and the breath forgets its rhythm. But when words drop, orders cease. Stillness becomes the authority. Be still and know that I am God. Not be still and recite. Be still and know. Knowing is not a sentence. Knowing is a state. In that state, the body stops taking cues from headlines and thought and starts taking cues from the quiet eye. The judge has returned to the bench and speaks in silence. The court rises, not in panic, but in order. Do not imagine I am despising scripture or knowledge. I am honoring their purpose by letting them lead me past themselves. A label can guide me to the gate. It cannot enter the sanctuary. A verse can open the window. It cannot be the air. So when agitation grows loud, I do not multiply syllables like a charm. I sit, I let the words that have helped me fall like leaves, one by one, until only the sap of being remains. I. And there, in the I and not before, peace appears, not as an argument won, but as presence recognized. The kingdom of God is within you, within beneath the phrases, behind the names, beneath the scan and the number and the borrowed forecast. If a word must remain on my tongue, let it be, I uttered softly, or even without voice, as the mind's last gesture before it bows. I do not strain to hold the silence. I allow it to hold me. I do not command the body to be calm. I rest deny until the body senses the government and relaxes into it. Then, without decree, the breath remembers its Sabbath. The heart remembers its own psalm. And I, without story, without label, without second, abide. Beyond all labels and names, Only the living I remains, and in that I is peace. Now I bring the I out of abstraction and let it take its seat, not in the head. The head is the shelf of labels and pictures. The head is where scanning begins, where radar turns, where catalogs open. I do not enthrone the head. I locate I where it announces itself, right here in the chest, where breath moves, where warmth lives, where being speaks without words. The Spirit of God hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. I let attention settle there, not as a taskmaster, but as one who returns to the seat prepared from the foundation of the world. How do I do it? I sit. I place no strain on posture. I allow the shoulders to drop from their parade of duty. I bring attention kindly, directly, obediently to the center of the chest, not to study it, not to measure it, but to feel the fact of being. Before any interpretation, before any story, I ask only for the raw presence that says, I am. If the hand needs to rest lightly over the sternum for a moment, let it, not as a ritual, but as if greeting a familiar. Then I watch the breath where it touches the chest, not in the nasal passages, not as numbers, but as a tide that carries I on the exhale. Gently, on the out-breath, I let the word I shape itself, or even rise without sound, and I wait 2 heartbeats after the exhale for the hush to fill. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts. I let it. Why is this necessary? Because health anxiety is a migrant of the head. It pulls attention upward into a tower of interpretation. What is that? How fast? How often? What if? Then the head orders the body into a drill. And the body, poor instrument asked to be a general, panics. But the moment I come down into the chest, I come down into government. The seat is occupied. The kingdom has a center. The stories continue to knock at the skull, but the judge is on the bench and does not rise to meet this order at the door. I rest, and the body, sensing law, stops being a battlefield and becomes governed. Now, yes, the mind will try its old employment. It will tug at the sleeve. Check, name, forecast. It will insist that attention is needed up there where the files are. I will not condemn the tug. I will not fight the thought. I simply resume my office. I return attention again and again and again to the chest. Each return is training, not failure. Each return deepens the groove by which attention learns its home. I have had my long periods of walking this very path back and forth. Sometimes the head shouts in capital letters, but not for long. I breathe. I exhale. I wait those 2 heartbeats after the out-breath. And in that small Sabbath, the spell breaks. Make it practical. 3 minutes, several times a day. No heroics. Eyes soft or closed. Attention in the chest. On each exhale, the single word I, aloud, not forced. Watch for the sign of true success, not fireworks. The breath evens, the jaw unhooks, the chest warms as if a lamp were lit from within. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. How do I obey that? By placing the heart under its rightful rule. I do not demand that the heart stop. I let the government be felt, and the heart obeys the peace more than the command. If a sensation rises while I sit, I do not chase it into the head for comment. I receive it as a report, right here, under the government. I answer with I on the breath and let the report be filed without a verdict. If the mind says, hurry, I answer gently. If it says, now, I answer here. If it says, explain, I answer I, and I remain. The instrument softens. The gate grows faithful. The governor is present in the chest, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. And because I sit there, the body ceases its campaigns and returns to its holy task, a temple under quiet law. Now I must show you the evidence by which I know the king is on the throne. It is not a theory. It is not a bravado. It is breath. Dominion, when it is more than a sentence, takes the breath into its order, and the kingdom acknowledges its ruler in the simplest liturgy. Breathe gently, breathe slowly, and always on the exhale let the word I be given back to its source, never shouted, never forced, just released like a dove from the hand. I do not coach the inhale, I permit it. I do not grab the exhale. I accompany it with I. And at the end of that exhale, I wait 1, 2 heartbeats, not counting in numbers, but sensing the small hush in which peace be still is not spoken as a command, but as a fact. This is not breath work as a project. This is government felt as respiration. I sit or stand wherever I am, and I make a continuous meditation for 2 or 3 minutes. Exhale, I rest, receive. If distraction arrives, I do not tighten. I return. If the mind asks, are we doing it right? I answer with another soft I, and let the question fold into the hush. In returning and rest, shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Returning on the exhale, rest in the pause. Strength, not the clench of will, but the evidence of order appearing as breath that is forgotten to hurry. Now what tells me I am succeeding? The breath slows. The breath evens. It may become almost imperceptible, as if the body were listening to a psalm instead of a siren. The urgency that whips the head begins to look around and discover no parade to lead. The jaw unhooks. The belly softens. The chest warms. I feel time lose its edge. I am not trying to make these signs appear. I am watching for their arrival as the body receives peace as its instruction. He breathed on them and saith unto them, receive ye the Holy Ghost. I then am not forcing air. I am receiving governance. I am consenting to the Spirit's rhythm, and the instrument answers its conductor. Part of this practice is what I call travel within the body. After the breath has remembered its Sabbath, I let attention gently, kindly visit the places that once triggered alarm. The throat where tightness once announced doom, the chest where the drum once frightened me, the stomach where the knots begged for names. I do not go there to inspect, to measure, to judge. I go there to include them in the dominion of stillness. I carry the atmosphere of I like a lamp into those rooms and simply sit for a few breaths. Exhale I into the throat, rest. Exhale I into the chest, rest. Exhale I into the belly, rest. Not pushing air downward, no mechanics, just laying the scepter of awareness upon the member as a king touches a shoulder and says, be at peace. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, not Veda as peace, presence as peace. Let me repeat. Lest the ego turn this into a project of fixing. I am not tinkering with organs by thought. I am not a mechanic with wrenches. I am establishing atmosphere, And in atmosphere, harmony appears of itself. The government shall be upon his shoulder. I am consenting to that government within this temple. When the air of the kingdom fills a room, the dust settles without argument. So when I rest in I, and let the breath mirror that rest, the body reporter, not ruler, reads the room and aligns. If in the midst of this a surge comes, the mind shouts a number, the pulse drums a memory, I will not slap at it. I resume my office. I exhale, I wait those 2 quiet beats. I may whisper within, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And I watch fear lose its pace when I refuse to lend it mine. Its metronome runs on my belief. Starved of it, it falters, it drifts, it passes. Make it a rule of life. At thresholds before the meal, before the work, before sleep, upon waking 3 or 4 breaths with the exhaled I. No heroics, faithful, ordinary, royalty. Do not look for visions. Look for the simple sign. Breath under government. When the breath witnesses to the throne, the thoughts line up by themselves. Be still and know that I am God. Be still by breath, know by I. And in that knowing, dominion is not merely believed or recited. It is felt, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. Now we come to the instant of use, the knock at the door in the form of a flutter, a pinch, a heat, a chill. This is where dominion is not a doctrine but a decision. I am the porter. I am the tiler. I receive reports and I refuse verdicts. First, I stop the story. I do not let the head run off into yesterday's article or tomorrow's doom. I say within, halt. Peace, be still. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Next, I name it. Suggestion. Not mine, not me, not a law. A suggestion seeking a host. Then I return right here to the chest where I rises, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. I let the body feel that I have taken my seat. After that, I exhale the word I, softly, gently, as a judge sets down the gavel. And finally, I listen for the inner quiet, the small hush after the outbreath in which the government is felt. These 5 are my protocol. Stop the story, name it suggestion, return to I, exhale I, listen. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. While I do this, I give my mind its line, and I give it every time it tries to seize the throne. You may report, but you may not rule. Again, you may report, but you may not rule. Again, you may report, but you may not rule. I do not shout it. I do not threaten. I state jurisdiction. The mind is the newsroom. It is not the bench. The body is the messenger. It is not the magistrate. I am the I on the bench, and the kingdom waits upon my stillness more than upon my analysis. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Let permit yield the chair to peace. Now, yes, discernment is not neglect. I can take a glass of water. I can lie down. I can keep an appointment. I can submit to a test. I can follow sober counsel without surrendering sovereignty. I render care to the instrument. I do not hand it a crown. I walk to the clinic under the same law. I sit in my chair. Breath under government. I on the exhale, the pause receiving. I decline the comic tragedy in which obsession masquerades as prudence. Obsession says, measure again, and again, and again, or else. Prudence says, let us act once, sanely, and be done. I answer obsession with my line. You may report, but you may not rule. I answer prudence with peace. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known unto God. And I watch the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, keep garrison my heart and mind. This is repetition by design. The nervous system learns by what I rehearse. If I rehearse frenzy, it will find its mark faster next time. If I rehearse government, it will obey sooner. Precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. Sometimes the old compulsion shouts in capitals. Sometimes at 2 a.m. the thought arrives with a costume of inevitability. I will not be bullied by costume. I resume my office, stop the story, name its suggestion, return to the chest, exhale. Why? Listen. If the compulsion tugs again, I give it the line again. You may report, but you may not rule. I stand, having done all to stand. And I wait for the sign, not of triumphalism, but of simple order. The breath slows, the shoulders drop, the pace breaks, the hush appears. In that hush, verdicts die of lack of oxygen, because I will not breathe for them. Let me make it plain in the day's small scenes. At the grocery line, a jolt arrives. I do not stare at the ceiling tiles and calculate doom. I rest my gaze softly. I come to the chest. I exhale. And in 2 heartbeats, I feel the bench under me again. At the desk, a wave of heat surprises. I do not Google the apocalypse. I say within, a suggestion knocked, and I did not sign. I breathe the one word. I listen. If a sip of water is in order, I take it as a king sips, not as a hostage gulps. In the night, a drum in the ribs. I lay the hand over the sternum, not as a mechanic, but as one returning to the lamp already lit. I exhale, I whisper, fear not, for I am with thee. And I feel the pace drop out of the panic because I refuse to lend it mine. I do not promise never to be startled again. I promise never again to enthrone the startled one. Reports are received, verdicts are refused. The gate is faithful. The bench is occupied. The instrument is at rest under law. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I then can receive bodily reports with calm discernment while refusing fear's verdict, because I have learned the simple, sovereign way. Stop the story, name its suggestion, return to I, exhale I, listen and let peace, not panic, pronounce the only sentence heard in this court. Be still. Now I must widen the circle. For anxiety is a famine born of a small world. I cannot go on speaking as if there were my little supply of health in a jar and time were a thief with a measuring cup. I cannot count sensations like coins and say, I spent 2 palpitations today. I cannot afford 3 tomorrow. That arithmetic is the math of separation, and separation is a lie. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Fullness does not bargain. Fullness does not dwindle. Fullness does not peak at the clock. Therefore, I refuse the premise of private health under siege. I stand in the one life, the one health, the one being expressing as harmony. There is one body and one spirit. And because I and the Father are one, I live in that one body of life. I breathe that one spirit of peace. I manifest that one government which knows no scarcity. Now, yes, scarcity fuels the very pace of fear. Watch how it works. The mind, having accepted exile, begins to tally probability, percentage, risk, reserve. It treats breath as a ration, heartbeat as a budget, time as an enemy. It takes a symptom and shops it against a forecast as if the universe were a marketplace with shelves running low. But Jesus says, take no thought for your life and consider the lilies, which is to say, stop haggling in a store that does not exist. I do not live off a private pantry of vitality. I live off the infinity of being. The Lord is the strength of my life. Not a portion, not a weekend's worth, the strength of my life. When I return to I return to this fact. Health is not a possession I defend. Health is the nature of life revealing itself. And I am included because I cannot be outside of I. As separation softens, so does the body. My psyche ceases to crouch in a corner, guarding a candle against the wind. I find that your peace blesses me. My ease blesses you. There is no my health and thy health, for there is only health distributing itself as all. My interests are your interests, because we are not two combatants but one, life looking out through many windows. We are members one of another. When I remember this, my breath lets go of competition. My nervous system drops its elbows. The flesh stops auditioning for survival because it senses the chorus in which it already belongs. I do not need to win against the clock, because I and the clock are subject to the same I that is timeless. Let me reframe compassion in this light. What would I give a child who trembles? I would not quote odds. I would not announce scarcity. I would give presence, patience, and the dignity of unhurried regard. I then must give exactly that to this instrument and to any who cross my path, because in truth there is no other to exclude from mercy. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, not as a duty to another, but as a recognition of self in another. I cannot afford panic for them. I cannot afford panic for me. Panic starves the same household. I cannot afford harshness toward their body or mind. Harshness bruises the same fruit. Therefore, I assume the gentle I, not an egotistical I. And I lay its atmosphere upon every face I meet, including the one in my mirror. Make it plain in the street. When I hear a friend recount symptoms, I do not rush to the ledger. I rest in I exhale I, and I let the sense of one health fill the space between us. I do not compete for a scarce commodity called wellness. I witness to the endlessness of life. Freely ye have received, freely give. I give assurance without argument, calm without performance, space for breath to remember its Sabbath, and I discover a law. What I bless returns as atmosphere in my own chest. As I refrain from narrating doom over them, the habit of doom loosens in me. As I grant dignity to their process, the same dignity clothes this body. My interests are your interests. Your peace blesses me. Because I am thyself, I cannot deprive you without impoverishing me. I cannot enrich you without increasing me. My cup runneth over. Over what? Over every edge of myself imagined as separate. Now, part of this is a daily choice to stop thinking in slices and start abiding in wholeness. When the old account keeper lifts his head and says, "How much health do we have left for the day?" I answer, none and all. None as possession, all as presence. When he says, "How likely are we to last?" I answer, I and the Father are one. Likelihood is a language for gamblers. I abide when he says, "Others will take your share scarcity again." I answer with the truth of our unity. If I withhold from them, I withhold from myself. If I pour peace into them, I drink it first. Perfect love casteth out fear. Not a sentimental love, but the love that recognizes no second, and therefore no rival, and therefore no urgency to hoard. So I rest. I rest from bargaining. I rest from odds. I rest from the little jar called my health and from the calendar called my time. I breathe the one word on the exhale, and I consent to the ocean instead of counting buckets at the shore. One life, one health, one being. I then am the health of my countenance because I and the Father are one. I then am the strength that does not dwindle because strength is being, not budget. And in that awareness, the body, relieved of isolation, loosens its grip, and the day goes on under a different sky. No longer me against the hours, but I within the infinite, and the infinite within me. Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. Now I ask you to look out and let the world preach to you. Not a human sermon, but the sermon every leaf and feather has been delivering since before our ancestors worried their first worry. Behold the fowls of the air. They do not draft maps for migration, yet they lift in season and return in season, as if the sky itself were a road they could read by heart. Consider the lilies. They do not calculate wardrobe, yet appear clothed beyond Solomon. Watch the grass lift from the soil without a meeting, the sap rise without a memo, the tide keep faith with the moon without a consultant. Even here, under your own nail, see the slow white crescent advancing day by day. See a small cut draw its edges together while you sleep. See breath enter and withdraw through the night while you are not on duty. He that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. There is a government in this universe that does not grow anxious when you do. There is a lawfulness in life that is not the product of your personal watchfulness. I sit as the porter, and I let this world's quiet instruction pass into me. Dominion is not a drama. It is the nature of life to live itself. Now, why call it instinct and leave it at that? Instinct is not a second power. It is the sign of the one eye moving his wing and root and tide. In him we live and move and have our being. Not in a theory, not in an ego disguised as God, but in the living eye that upholds all things by the word of his power. The swallow does not boast. It yields. The tree does not strain. It abides. The grass does not argue with the soil. It consents and is lifted. So must I. Not as a swashbuckler with spiritual muscles, not as the ego hero trying to impress the nervous system, but as the gentle eye that knows and therefore does not hurry. I will not deny what panic claims, but I deny its throne. If the one that keeps the galaxies in their places, that folds and unfolds the fern, that draws the moon on its silver leash, governs without panic, then surely that same one can govern these lungs, this heart, this chemistry without panic. Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? Taking thought is the false manager. Fear is the foreman who fires everyone and locks the door. I relieve it of duty. I return the shop to its rightful owner. Perfect love casteth out fear. Not by fighting fear, but by filling the room with presence until fear has nowhere to stand. Turn observation into contemplation. As you look upon a tree, inwardly whisper, not loudly, not to perform, but to recognize, I am the life of this tree. I am the life of this body. Do you see the danger? Only if you make I into Joel. Never do that. I is not Joe. I is the one that says, I am that I am. The same I that rises through the trunk as sap rises through your chest as breath. The same I that directs the wing directs the pulse. So I walk in a field or look from a window or stand at a sink, and on the exhale I give the one word I, and let its meaning extend beyond my skin. I hear as tree, I hear as bird, I hear as body. Not many lives, one life, revealing itself as all. Make it immediate in the anxious hour. A flutter comes. I look to the nearest sermon, a branch moving, a cloud crossing, even the slow turning of a shadow on the wall, and I let it remind me government is proceeding. I exhale, I wait those quiet heartbeats. I do not beg the body to obey. I let the body overhear the ocean. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He restoreth my soul. If I have a cut, I watch it close, and I join it by not interfering. If I see the nail growing, I bow to that holy monotony and match it. Steady, unhurried, faithful. If in the night breath goes on without my permission, I let that be my proof that I am carried, not carrying. Let me repeat, for the mind will try to make poetry out of this and miss the point. This is not romance. This is demonstration. The sermon is not only in Scripture. It is in the robin, in the dandelion cracking concrete, in the tide refusing to forget its hour. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Therefore, I refuse to live as an exception. I refuse to cast myself as the lone citizen outside the kingdom's law. I take my seat as porter. I yield to the gentle eye. I let nature's order set my pace. Then the body, humbled and relieved, stops staging emergencies and hears what it has always known. The same life that governs all governs here. And under that government, without fanfare, I go on quiet, steady, renewed. Now we put the crown on its stand each day. Dominion is not an event. It is a state maintained by small fidelities. I cannot permit my rule to be a burst followed by neglect. I must maintain my God-given dominion by a rule of life for the porter and the tiler. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Therefore I set the hours and keep them, not as a tyrant, but as a steward. Morning, before the world speaks, I speak. 2 or 3 minutes is enough. When done as royalty, not as a tourist. I do not reach for the device. I reach for the chest. I take my seat. I let the shoulders drop. I exhale the one word I and wait those quiet heartbeats. Then, aloud or within, I assume my office. I stand here, the porter at the door of thought. Nothing shall enter my mind or body that defileth. I stand here as a tiler over my mind and my body. I will not permit urgency or dread to take the chair. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Give us this day our daily bread, and I take my bread as breath under government. That is my first sacrament, breath-bearing. I thought under I, body under I. Midday, the metronome of the world will try to borrow me. I schedule a return before the pace owns the afternoon. 2 or 3 minutes again, nothing dramatic. I close the door if I can. If I cannot, I close it within. I come to the chest. I exhale. I listen. I ask my guard the question a tiler must ask. What tone has been knocking at our door? Not only what thoughts, but what weather, urgency, dread, compulsion, the itch to measure. I do not condemn the weather. I deny it the gavel. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Rule, govern, decide. If I find myself speeded up, I refuse to lend fear my pace. If I find myself heavy with foreboding, I name it. Suggestion. You may report, but you may not rule. I breathe again. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. I stay, and the mind, feeling the stay, remembers whom it serves. Evening. I put the kingdom to bed, as I put the body to bed. 2 or 3 minutes. I sit on the edge of the day, and I release the suggestions that knock news, opinions, stray sentences, looks on faces, a twinge that tried to be a story. I gather them up without judgment, and I lay them down. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. I exhale, I over the day, and let the court adjourn without unfinished business. If any thought argues for a night session, I answer, court is closed. The judge neither slumbers nor sleeps, but this mind does. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. I leave the bench occupied and the room darkened. Now the role of the tiler must be understood. The porter watches the ideas that seek entry. The tiler watches the field around the door, the emotional tone, the speed, the pressure, the brand of hurry that sneaks truth past the mind. I stand here as tiler over my mind and my body, and I say in sober love, no admittance to panic as ruler, no crown for compulsion, no scepter for dread. They may post their notices in the street, but they may not enter this lodge with sword unsheathed. Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The watching is the tiler. The praying is the breath saying I. The not entering is the refusal to let atmosphere usurp the throne. Part of our watching is preemptive. Relapse has doors. The news cycle, the scroll of other people's startle, the search bar that looks like help and speaks like doom. I will not make a religion of avoidance, but I will practice spiritual hygiene. I set boundaries as law, not as fear. I do not check headlines before my morning sacrament. I do not graze social opinions in the hour when my pace is fragile. I do not consult the oracle of dread by symptom searching when suggestion knocks. If counsel is needed, I seek it sanely and once, then I return to I. Be sober, be vigilant. Sobriety is a schedule. Vigilance is a gate, let me say, because I know the human trick. Sometimes it still tries to get the best of me. A headline slides under the door. A midnight search calls itself prudence, but not for long. I snap out of it by resuming my office. Morning vow, midday return, evening release, no heroics, gentle, relentless royalty. Pray without ceasing does not mean chatter. It means continuity. Dominion, once assumed, must be maintained not by swashbuckling I ams, but by the gentle eye that breathes, watches, and yields. These small fidelities keep thought and body under quiet government. And under that government, the day moves without spectacle and without lack, because the throne is not vacant and the tiler is at his post. Now hear the end that is really a beginning. When the governor is restored to his seat, the realm answers. The breath hears and slows. The nerves hear and soften. The flesh hears and stops shouting because the judge has entered the room. He restoreth my soul. Where the future had been a courtroom with subpoenas and cross-examinations, it becomes again a garden with dew on the grass. Behold, I make all things new. Not because I have bullied a body into obedience, but because I have yielded the gavel to the one before whom storms fall silent. Under the government of the living, fear loses its rule and life expresses as renewal. I will not pretend this is accomplished by a personality with better tricks. Of mine own self I can do nothing. Not Joel. Never Joel. It is the Father within that doeth the works. It is not a swashbuckling eye that forces. It is the gentle eye that reveals. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Therefore, even as harmony appears, sleep becoming kind again, appetite remembering its season, rhythm returning to its Sabbath, I refuse to pin a medal on a person. I bow. I say, thank you for the government that was always present, awaiting my consent. Let the promise be heard in your very cells. Resurrection is not a holiday. It is a law. I am the resurrection and the life. I then, in conscious oneness, am the place where rising occurs, staleness rising into freshness, agitation rising into order, exhaustion rising into strength. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Waiting is not idleness. It is governance by consent. I sit. I yield. I let the life that moves trees and tides take this instrument into its cadence, and by a quiet inevitability the body answers back with signs of homecoming, less clutching in the gut, less thunder in the head, less bargaining with time, more ordinary ease. Regeneration, then resurrection. Renewal that does not strain. Rising that does not boast. Now I seal this teaching over you and over me with a final litany, not shouted, but spoken as law. I rest. I yield. I listen. I stand guard. I assume conscious dominion. I let life be life. Again, I rest. I yield. I listen. I stand guard. I assume conscious dominion. I let life be life. And as I do, peace, not as a concept, but as a climate, takes the chair and holds it. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Here is our gentle charge. Simple enough to keep, strong enough to shape the weak. For the next 7 days, whenever fear arises, before any search, before any call, before any spiral, return to the chest and exhale the word I 3 times. No rush, no theater, just 3 out-breaths bearing the name that is nearer than your breathing. Then wait those small heartbeats and let the bench be felt. If action is needed, act sanely. If counsel is needed, seek it once, but always from the chair, never from the hallway. These 3 exhalations are your passport at the gate. Use them faithfully, and the old kingdom of alarm will not admit you. So I close, not with a period, but with a blessing that does not end. Fear, you have no throne here. Verdicts, you have no gavel here. Compulsion, you have no crown here. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. I then live in the gift, not the gamble. I then walk in renewal that renews itself, regeneration that is its own spring, resurrection that is not an event but a way. Under the government of the living eye, the body is quietly governed, the mind is kindly ruled, the hours are kept, and goodness and mercy, without ceremony, follow me all the days of my life. Now I rest. Now I yield. Now I listen. Now I stand guard. Now I assume conscious dominion. Now I let life be life. And it is so.